Dulce, a small town in New Mexico, is an area rich with ghostly and cryptid reports. In 2010, A. Gomez and 6 of her classmates had been out drinking and partying in the woods outside Dulce. At around 2:30 a.m., in the pitch black darkness, they began to walk down the main road to Gomez's car so that she could drive them home. She was the only girl in the group. As they walked towards the car, one of the friends demanded that she come home with him. She told him no, at which point this friend insisted that he was a SkinWalker, a legendary creature with the ability to transform at will. Of course, the other guys in the group began to chuckle at his absurd claim. A headlight soon appeared on the road, and Gomez, assuming that it was a cop out on patrol, told everyone to hide by the creek, which was just off the side of the road. They did, and it was a cop. As the cruiser passed by and continued on down the road, the moon appeared out from behind some clouds, illuminating the area. Gomez and her friends began to make their way out of the creek and back onto the road. That is when something very, very strange began to manifest. Their friend, who had insisted that he was a skinwalker, suddenly fell down onto the ground and curled up into a fetal position. Gomez recalled thinking that he had dropped something, though she was shocked by what occurred next. In front of her and her friend's eyes, this friend transformed into what she could only describe as a dog, black in color with a long bushy tail. It proceeded to charge off in the direction where they had just come. Being that I wasn't as fast as the guys, I was screaming, running, trying to catch up. We finally made it to my vehicle and were all freaked out at what we just saw. Couldn't believe it because we knew this person since elementary school. We ended up all staying at my house in my room. Nobody wanted to leave. In Cartusa, Oklahoma, a witness, Linda C., claims that she observed a very strange sight while leaving work one night in June 2019. It had been raining that night and was still wet as she exited the factory where she worked and began making her way across the darkened parking lot towards her car. I parked by this maroon-looking car. I think it was a Cadillac. The window seemed half wet towards the bottom half of the window. I just happened to look. I seen a girl sitting on the passenger side. She had brownish black shoulder-length hair. I waved at her thinking she might work here. When I got to the driver's side of the car, I looked again. I had to look twice. She had a pointy nose, a lot of hair. She looked like a wolf. Still not believing what she was seeing, Linda got into her car and proceeded to back up. As she did this, she pointed her headlights directly at the car. I looked again and seen what looked like a werewolf. Instead of turning around, she ducked down in the seat. I just kept going. Linda attempted to bring it up at work the next night, though her co-workers did not want to discuss it. She admits that there were more details about that evening she does not feel comfortable or safe discussing. She wonders, though, did she actually see a girl transform into a werewolf right in front of her eyes? I know what I saw. I'm not crazy. No one wants to talk about it, so I just leave it alone. In Palmdale, California, a witness, Sphillips, then 7 years old, claims that they encountered a strange entity in their room one hot summer evening in 2004. At the time, a movie had come out by the name of Jeepers Creepers. In that film, a serial killer dressed in a brimmed hat and trench coat preys on a brother and sister who had accidentally observed him dumping a body. As the film winds down, it is revealed that this killer is actually a demonic entity. The witness in Palmdale claims that the being they observed in their room actually resembled this creature. When I saw this individual, because of the trench coat and black-brimmed hat, I assumed that this was Jeepers Creepers himself. Note that there is a sequel to the movie where Jeepers reveals his true self, but in the first one, the one I'm talking about, he had this trench coat on with this brimmed hat setup. So me being the kid with the imagination that I had, I explained to my parents that this person looked like Jeepers Creepers. Of course, since I was only a child, my mother told me to stop watching horror films, but I honestly knew that this individual was certainly not Jeepers Creepers. I knew he was something else. Sphillips claims that this entity appeared in her room very late in the evening. He was wearing a black-brimmed hat and a black trench coat. She sensed a very real malicious intent from him as he stared at her. This is consistent with many other people who encounter this shadowy hat-wearing being. After her encounter, Sphillips began to research what she saw that evening. She is convinced that it was the HatMan. HatMan, werewolves, and SkinWalker type beings are occasionally seen in conjunction with UFO sightings. This is also true of black-eyed and white-eyed kids. Interestingly, another type of strange-eyed child was sighted in the fall of 1986 in Detroit, in Michigan. It's interesting to note that there were nearly 20 UFO sightings reported in Michigan in 1986. The witness, Matthew, no last name was provided, who was only 5 years old at the time, though has a very vivid memory of the event, recalled that he was staying at his grandmother's house in East Detroit. He had just come into the house after being outside most of the day, playing with other children in the neighborhood. He had just settled onto the living room couch and was watching television when he heard a knock on the door. Looking out the window, he observed 2 children, a girl and a boy. They were dressed in summer clothes, shorts, and the girl had a summer dress on. I looked out the window. I saw their eyes. They were lit up like a jack-o'-lantern. I mean, like lights. They did not know I was looking at them out the window. As his aunt moved towards the door to answer it, Matthew motioned for her, letting her know that he did not want to have anything to do with these 2 strange children. They were asking if I would come out to play with them, Matthew could hear as she opened the door. The aunt insisted that Matthew was not home and sent them on their way. Apparently their eyes were normal looking, as she did not appear to react in fright to them, as one would expect of seeing kids with glowing eyes. Thinking back, Matthew is thankful his aunt answered the door. He feels as though something very bad would have happened to him had he been persuaded to accompany them. And even though the whole experience lasted only a few seconds, he has come to recognize how utterly strange it was. She died last year of cancer, my aunt. I believe she saved my life that night. Those kids I saw were not kids. They were entities of some kind. There was a boy and a girl, and they both had blonde hair and their eyes were like jack-o'-lanterns. I can remember exactly how they looked. There are many reports of people who fall ill after an encounter with black-eyed kids. This is also true of reports involving white-eyed kids. In 2005, Kmitchell was driving through the Petrified Forest National Park in Arizona when she had a bizarre encounter with one of these entities that nearly killed her. I pulled over on a deserted stretch of road just after sunset. I hadn't seen a car for at least 1.5 hours. I got out to have a smoke and checked the map, and out of nowhere there was a kid who looked maybe 13, in a hoodie and jeans. She asked if I would give her a ride. I couldn't because I was packed to the gills in the middle of moving. So I declined but offered to let her use my phone so she could call someone. I even offered to wait with her until someone picked her up. She became livid and gave me a grimace, which is when I noticed the eyes, purely white. According to Mitchell, she became frightened and quickly opened her trunk, pulled out a sandwich and a bottle of water and set it on the road. She then jumped into her car and drove off. Even though she had left this strange teenager in her rearview mirror, she had no idea the horror that awaited her. Within a week, I was in the hospital with complete renal failure, with no idea from the doctors why it happened, and ended up flatlining twice. I didn't think much about it until I was telling my Nana from Norway about it, and she told me they're death harbingers.